keep the fundamentals solid. Primarily understanding that product is all about solving problems, communication, and make
Right.
it a part of your daily habit to keep learning and exploring new stuff.
Okay, guys. Chalo. So Serin Paul is live with us. Serin, why don't you start with your introduction? By the way, I know a lot about you, but okay. I think it's good to know more about your journey till now from you, and then we'll sort of break it. We'll talk more about it. Over to you.
First of all, thanks a lot, Jisha, for calling me for this show. Super excited to be part of this journey, to be with you guys. So myself, Serin Paul. So I'm currently part of a company called Gojek. A little bit about my past. I had started my journey as a software developer and then moved into product management, working with different companies, starting with different startups in the Indian ecosystem.
What do you think what are the kind of skill sets that our current education system is able to provide, which can be directly transferred to the requirements of a full stack development? Are we prepared enough?
What I would say is, way back then, when I was an engineer, I was not fully equipped for that, right? So for one of the things which we studied in engineering, I still remember that book from Balagurusamy, which was an introduction to C. So that's how I started my programming, right? So we fairly dealt with languages which were pretty old, not used in current system, because from Balaguri Sami's Objective-C to I jumped straight away into Ruby on Rails, which was founded very, very later on in the technology space, right? So I would say way back then we were not completely equipped with what we wanted to develop as a full stack developer, but I think things are changing for now, right? Things are changing.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And do you think that things are also changing just because of the kind of resources that are available to, sort of transition your learning from a C to Ruby on Rails? Earlier, back then, there were, all these books, and now there are, multiple courses which are on demand. Everything is available on a click. Has that transitioned the overall learning procedure as well?
Yeah, I think yes and no. Like way back then, also internet was in its fairly development stages. In fact, pretty developed at that point of time. But I would say one thing which is very common at that point of time and this point of time is the intent of the person who is learning, right? So if you're a person who is an explorer who would love to explore different things, that intent is what primarily helps you in terms of learning multiple things, right? And then that transition becomes very, very easy, right? If you don't love to dabble with a lot of things, it's the same way back then and now, right? So I would primarily suggest it's all about the intent. Yeah.
Got it. So how long was this coder phase?
So I did coding for 2.5 years, and one of the key things which came to my mind, I still remember that, right? So what way back then struck me pretty very, very clearly was I started exploring a lot of stuff, right? So I got this chance to be part of a startup which fairly dealt with a lot of different things, right? And within the startup itself, we were multiple times pivoting into different things. So maybe it was because of the founders in experience or the teams in experience, right? We were pivoting into multiple products within the startup itself, right? So we started with a very fairly simple to-do app to finally pivoting on Zomato for jewelry kind of a model, right? So in fact, I iterated 6 times before we even decided on what to build, right? And at that point of time, we were like the founder in himself was shelling lakhs of money, right? So we were fairly lucky to get a founder like that who was ready to explore and invest money in us. So that gave me that chance to get into a different phases of exploration, where I also learned about how to pivot products to how to try different dimensions of products. So that I was very lucky at that point of time, right? So
fair. How long was this phase of trial and error? I can call that out.
Back to your question. I was lucky enough to be part of the startup for 2.5 years. After which unfortunately it had to close because of multiple reasons. But 2.5 years was a very rapid learning period for me, where I learned multiple things. So that was the time where I was fully into development for 2.5 years, completely dedicatedly. Yeah.
Got it. And then the Serin Paul version 2.0 happened, and you transitioned from a hardcore coder to a product manager. How was that transition like? What was the larger thought process?
Yes. So the larger thought process was while I was part of being this journey, right? Like for this 2.5 hours, we are exploring multiple products, trying different things. One of the key things which struck me was there was a lot of other aspects of the business which interested me, right? Like, so I got an opportunity to be part of sales a bit. I got an opportunity to be part of marketing a bit. Coder for like 8 hours in a day and spending a bit more time into trying to understand other things. One thing one key thought which came into my mind very strikingly, I still remember that one line. Serin, like, you are not a person who should spend your entire 8 hours in front of a computer, and it's not about just coding computers, it's far beyond that, right? So that line which somehow came to my mind during that discovery phase, and that was my strong intent to try different things, right? In fact that thought came into my mind and continued till my journey into my other company for 6 months, and that's how it phased out, right? So that was my one liner, right? It's not all about just programming something in the computer, but it's all about much beyond that.
And what was this beyond? And basically, so I think the right question in this case is that how did that beyond settle in while you were thinking of this beyond concept? How did it internalize within you?
Yes. So like any other engineers or anybody person in the early stages of career, I was also very clueless on what to do. Like I was worried about a lot of different facts, right? Like transitioning from a software to a product, like what would happen? How would it impact my career? Because I don't have an official or like even an MBA or anything, because way back then MBA was very much needed for product, right? So I had my bit of worries like that. But what happened was I in fact joined a company in Bangalore. So I was in Kerala. I moved to Bangalore. Bangalore was one of the things which I understood about Bangalore while I was in that exploratory phase was Bangalore was a place with a lot of opportunities and amazing startups and all this stuff. So in fact, I also tried my luck there. I was lucky enough to get into a company which was also very accepting in terms of so the founder there, I still remember a name. I just wanted to mention his name because I think he actually triggered my product skill set. So his name is Akshay. So he was running this company called foOfys. So foOfys also was a company which was in its very initial stages exploring a lot of stuff. So they were also taking a lot of people with a similar mindset, and I was lucky enough to get into there as a developer. Right? So I still got it there as a developer. Still afraid to pursue my product manager career. But what I understood is few months down there, I understood I started having conversations with the founder and himself and got this chance to be, I in fact remember asking this question also. So you asked me, right, like how did you start the exploration, right? So I in fact shared my thought with him, and he was very receptive to hear me out at that point of time, and also
Right.
gave me that opportunity to start trying different stuff, right? So he how it all started is he started calling me for sales meetings, gave me chance to individually run the different client meetings. That's how it all started. And also at one point of time he gave me this opportunity of being maybe like a chief product officer in the company, right?
Oh no! Wow.
It all happened very quickly. So 6 months down the line, I started attending sales meetings. Somehow he started getting confidence, and then like I slowly started transitioning from a software developer into more of like a chief product officer in that company. And chief product officer in that company meant that it was not like a huge company, right? It was like a 15 member company, and chief product officer they did not it was not a big deal there when that, right? So I was also confident in terms of taking that opportunity, and then it all started.
Right. I totally get that. What happened post foOfys? And I think that there comes a fairly exciting part of your journey where you transitioned from someone who sort of heads a bunch of multiple products, and then transitioning into a specific product focus organization.
When post foOfys happened, I was trying to focus on a lot of things. So starting from the journey of a software developer to moving into product, then I realized there are few things which I felt like is core to me, which is very close to my heart. So I tried to start now focusing on things, right? So that is the post foOfys phase for me, right? From a large spectrum to now start trying to focus into specific things, right? So in fact, like how I wrote it down, I still remember how I wrote it down. So like from the different skills I learned, I just picked few things which was huge spots for me, and just picked it and tried to start working on that specific pieces. And product manager as a role was very much sweet spot for me, because it involved building something, creating something, building a team around it, and also like the execution part of it, right? So that's when I got this chance to interact with and start working with this company called Tonguestun. So Tonguestun was in its very early stages there. So as a business, it was mature, and the idea was validated, but it didn't have a very core product line at that point of time, right? So Tonguestun was also in its pivoting stages, but as a business, it was mature enough to say it is something which had huge traction, and that's where the phase where I came in. But there was no a big team there, but there was an idea there. There was something which they validated at that point of time, and I got the opportunity to primarily build and solidify the ecosystem of product there, and also to scale it to the next level, right?
Can you sort of just take a moment to give more details about this validated idea of Tonguestun?
Yes. So in fact, what happened was, by the time I joined there, the founders there had so I think they have been into existence for around 4 years, and what happened was they had fairly validated the idea by doing different processes. Like I don't have.
So by the way, so Tonguestun is in food catering space, right? Or had been in food catering space like that.
Yes.
Got it.
So it was primarily a marketplace for companies, like primarily corporate companies, in order to find the right vendors for the cafeterias. So that was also an evolved model where they finally pivoted into a model where they not only provided vendors but also technology in order to run the entire cafeteria, right? So
and this has been an industry which sort of has operated without tech. And I think the corporate catering space is something space is fairly, I think, slow moving in nature, and doesn't appreciate tech that much. So it's almost like if I am an employee, I'll just sort of transact in cash, or now via Paytm, and then sort of get into that whole logistics of taking my food from one counter to another. And that's where Tonguestun came in, because again there wasn't any set premise around whether if I'm not liking the food, do we have a provision of changing the vendor? And I think that's where Tonguestun came in.
Right. So I think what I understand how it is like they moreover building a tech around it, they had a set of problems they were facing, right? So
Right.
traditionally, what I understood how they were working was like they would have a corporate cafeteria, like larger companies would have a bunch of their cafeterias. They would have an admin or somebody who would select a bunch of catering guys to work with. They'll put them there, do primarily checks, and then start serving food there, right? But
Right.
eventually, what happened was that entire curation process to managing the entire setup to finally like running it day to day was a big challenge for them, right? And
Right.
I think like nobody in the industry or in the ecosystem was having something similar, or like nobody had explored it to that level, right? So that is
Right.
when Tungsten came in and told like
Sure.
we have something like this, we will curate things, we'll try to solve these problems for you. And I think they just start adopting that entire layer, and finally it ended up as a technology product also. So,
Sure.
but I think that entire thought process came from the key problem statements which were there, right?
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, but they didn't have a very good tech stack or a tech ecosystem there in order to run this efficiently, right? Right from curating the vendors to running it day to day, that tech stack was not there. But in fact, I feel like they were in very initial stages of building that stack, but they couldn't like take it to the next level. So that's when I
Right.
got a chance to be part of the team. What immediate my task there was in order to build a team there, right? So I think there was around four people there when I joined, and the
Okay.
biggest challenge we faced there was in order to do something like this, we needed a team, right? So what I quickly did was I in fact called all my colleagues because my previous company had to shut down because of multiple reasons. So
Right.
my initial thought process was just call them because I knew like there were some amazing folks there. I just connected with all of them. In fact, like in a month, brought like around 8 folks there into the team, and
Wow.
then
Very
then
resourceful.
yeah, yeah. So I think I still remember that journey, right?
Right.
It was a 1 month, like going through different calls, getting all
Right.
my earlier friends back into the team, and
Uh-huh.
then it was matter of execution because we had a solid foundation in terms of the idea, and then
Right.
we just started executing on different products which to solve all these problems we had in hand.
Sure. Sure. You just mentioned about that. They didn't uh, uh, have a tech stack back then, right? So, what exactly is a tech stack?
So in terms of if you look at this entire problem statements which we mentioned earlier, in order to solve each phases of it, we needed a solid product line, right? So in order to run a day-to-day operations of a cafeteria, you need something like specific apps for it, right? Or some technology help because having a manual driven process there becomes very cumbersome, right?
Of course.
And Tungsten being in that stage of scaling, it became so super important, right? So they had a very basic setup in terms of tech stack. On in terms of, I still remember, I think it was primarily in terms of curation of vendors. They had a good platform how to do it, but it was not a combination of different products in order to connect all these different dots, right?
Right.
So
Right.
so later on it evolved into multiple segments, right? Having a customer side of product to having a section for companies in order to monitor things, and also a product line in order to do daily checks on different stuff. So that entire connecting of different products to building on top of that to scalability is what I did there, right? Just by scalability, what I meant is in terms of, so we were in a phase where we had around 5,000 transaction, to which it moved to around 1 lakh plus transaction in a course of 8 months, right? So which means
Okay.
that it's
That's
not all about building
massive
that
speed.
products. Yes. So it's not all about just building those product lines, but also about scaling the tech stack to accommodate that number of orders at that frequency, right? So let's say like at the peak hours, there are from 1 lakh orders hitting the system in a 1 hour span. The stack itself was not capable of, I mean, like accommodating that order. So which meant that we had to scale the infra part of things and all the stuff. So all these things involved, right? So to just summarize it, it would mean that connecting these different products to scaling it to the next level to accommodate that volume of orders is what I primarily played a key part in. Right. Yeah.
Sure. Sure. So now within 8 months, it's moved to 1 lakh transactions.
Yes.
I think there is this is where the red carpets roll out, right? I mean, how
Yes.
does this transaction of 1 lakh per month to acquisition by Zomato. Tell us a bit more about this.
Yes. So as I mentioned earlier, they had a good foundation in terms of validating their business idea. They had some foundational products also, but they were not ready to take it to the next level in terms of scale, right? So when this aspect of business combined with ability to scale came in place, so that is where the sweet spot hit, right? So the people started noticing us, right? So more companies started finding this entire product to be useful for them, because it's definitely solving a problem for them. And I think maybe at that point of time is what Zomato also might have noticed us, because there is a good business idea, there is a good product line. Then why not we just merge Tonguestun to Zomato, because it was in alignment with Zomato's larger process of building that ecosystem of products in order to
and good food for everyone.
Yeah, good food for everyone.
Zomato happened. Tungsten switched its name to Food at Work by Zomato, right?
Yes.
What were the larger, sort of elements that product management team at Tungsten had to cater to in order to smoothly transition into the Zomato ecosystem?
Yeah, so it is all about, so again, like if you look at the larger picture, it's binding into the vision of a larger company, right? So binding not only happens at a business level, it happens at the product level also, right? So like the business should be able to connect the dots, and like as you said earlier, to connect to that larger vision, there should be some connection, right? So this connection happens everywhere. In fact, it should happen everywhere, because if that connection is not there, it's all about a different independent system altogether, and it can't leverage each other, right? So so in fact I think one of the few things which we did was, in order to connect that dots on identifying the areas of how do you bind both these systems on what is larger Zomato to what is Food at Work, and establishing a connection, so which eventually turned out to be an integration. And you all could see that tab in the Zomato app, where you could see like the third tab, which was called Food at Work later on. So eventually this entire thought process converted into something like a product integration. Yeah, so that's what
got it. So tell me this thing. The first product is based on some intrinsic technology. The second product, which is a fairly larger product, is again built on a bunch of complex technologies. How do we? So what are the things that sort of as a product manager you have to take into consideration in order to? So I'm sure that there must be a bunch of let goes that, okay, we have been using this for quite some time, no point using it. Let's accommodate ourselves in a manner which fits well within the larger ecosystem. Is that the correct understanding?
That's right.
So does that then require a code rewrite as well? Okay, if code rewrite is one, then what are the other technology related elements that will be sort of critical for any product manager to know and understand, and at least from an expectation setting standpoint, they should be aware of, okay, if that's such a sort of integration is happening, these are the things, or these are the, so to say, the best practices to be kept in mind.
If you look at it and structure it, I would say it would be the user experience would be the primary part, because that's where the entire journey starts. And at the backend level, at the technology level, it's about the seamless handshake between the larger product to the smaller product, right? So some of the few things which as a product manager we should keep in mind is, first is, as I mentioned earlier, ensure a seamless experience. Second, at the product level, how fast can you make that handshake happen, right? So which means that the entire architecture, or like the connection, should be established in such a way that it does not take too much time in order to do that handshake. So one small example I would say is, let's say in this case, Zomato brought in that specific tab inside the Food at Work tab inside this, right? So which meant that like there will be a lot of different things and multiple ways to it, right? And one of the key thought thought process we had at that point of time was to how fast we can do that technologically. Like for example, can we still keep the backend the same way, right? By backend, what I meant is just connect the front end part of it and merge the apps and keep the entire backend things or the systems the same way as it is.
Right.
Because
And separated in a way.
yeah, so technologically also, like I think you would also be familiar with this concept called microservices or modularization, right? Where we have this concept of compartmentalizing the product into multiple pieces, and the same thing is applied there, right? So since the product is the idea is to make it as compartmental as it is, to take it to the market as fast as possible. That's how the technology should be implemented. So that's the whole idea here. So it's not like getting everything in the canvas out there in the beginning itself and then starting. Rather, it's about identifying the large level process, identifying the major buckets, and then jumping into it, and then figuring out things on the fly. So that would be the approach which I would take. In fact, if I would be given that role. So I had, in fact, had another experience where in my recent company I'm doing something similar, but the idea is the same, right? Like it's not figuring everything in the beginning. It's about breaking it into different modules and then figuring out things on the fly.
Got it. How has life been post Zomato? I know that you have traveled Southeast Asia, explored a bunch of opportunities there, and I think that has been again quite an eventful journey for you. So how that whole process has been like?
Yeah, so in terms of summarizing that journey post Zomato, like I got an opportunity to work with a global team. So in fact, it was spread across two companies, also like the company which I'm in currently. So it's part of a company called Delivery Hero and also currently part of Gojek. So my biggest learning there was in fact like how to work with a larger distributed team, right? So all my experience was working with a team in a single room and talking face to face, right? Which completely changed when I made that move, right? So it was a drastic change in my entire way of working, in fact, right? So from a single room to a global ecosystem where you had to interact with multiple teams across geographies, not only in Southeast Asia but also in Germany, Berlin, all those places, right? So and one of my biggest learning is it's not the same, right? So it's super easy to build a product sitting in a room with a bunch of folks who you know personally and who you recruited by yourself, to moving from that state to building a product with a team which is geographically distributed and with a team who you have not recruited is a completely drastic different experience altogether, right? And I have made my fair of mistakes there, and also I had a lot of learnings also there, right? So one of my key learnings there primarily is in terms of two things, right? One is all about distributed product building, is all about communication, and the second thing is about to like how fast you can understand people, because communication and people is core to distributed product building, right? So you might be an expert in building products sitting in a room, but if you don't have the skills, you can't build distributed products.
Coming back to the core skills, do you see a difference in how the core skill of a product management are sort of carried on or passed on or imbibed within these different settings? Do you see a difference in them?
I would say not really, because if you look at the fundamentals of products, it's all about you building something to solve the customer's problem, and you building it in phases so that the customer's key problems are solved first, and then you are building on top of that, right? So that fundamental mindset or fundamental product thing for me, it's the same, right? So it's all about solving the problems, understanding the customer problems. But in order to, if you look at the second phase of my journey, what I talked about, in order to do that, there are different elements to it, right? Like having the right team to having the communication in place and all those stuff. That is what changes, right? So from a company to company, so like I've heard this common phrase, right? Like product management is not same in every company, right?
Right.
And I just want to connect that dots by saying this is exactly what they would mean by this.
Right.
So
Right.
the fundamentals are the same, but these moving parts like communication, when you have a different team, like working with a different team which was built by another guy, to having different technology stacks in place. So there are these moving parts which we changes around it. But if you are a person who can quickly adapt to this, that is where your success comes in, right? So,
Right.
Like, but always lean towards the fundamentals is what one thing which I have learned from my diverse experience which I had.
Sure. Does your initial stint as a software developer help you, sort of migrate to this product leadership role faster?
Definitely yes. Because one thing which I think, like as a product manager, you would be doing day to day would be like closely work with the engineers and also a lot of different other folks, right? So if you don't exactly understand that entire process in which how they develop that product, you'll not be able to get into that empathy state where you will be able to build the right product, right? So I would say that is definitely a big advantage, but I would say it's not a must if you have the mindset to learn and pick up things on the fly. So probably you doing a small software project and learning how it works would build that gap, but having that experience of building and coding on your own is definitely a huge advantage.
Sure. I totally get that. So for anyone in college right now, what is your advice? What are the things that they can focus on in order to transition well into the product management ecosystem?
So I would say keep the fundamentals solid. Like by fundamentals, what I mean is primarily understanding that product is all about solving problems, to having these key skill set, like by having this curiosity to learn new things, to explore a lot of stuff and all the stuff, right? Like, so I would say like everybody would have taught a lot about these fundamentals. So these fundamentals should be solid, right? So go and figure out these fundamentals, explore a lot by yourself, by making a lot of mistakes, by creating stuff, trying by also putting their stuff, right? So one of the key experience which I did was like way back in college itself, some things which we did as a team was we built small stuffs, we put there in the market, we tried to understand stuff, we failed miserably. In fact, like I think till the time where I joined Tonguestun, I had continuous failures. Right? I maybe like to count it like 8 or 10 times the products which I built have failed. Right. Post that is what I have had that taste of success itself. So it's all about that failure, but it's all about having that mindset to try every single time you fail, right? And also explore every single time, and make it a part of your daily habit to keep learning and exploring new stuff. There is tons of articles and all those stuff out there. I don't have to be explaining in detail about that, but have these basic mindset of exploring, and then it's all about just figuring out on the fly.
Right. So I think a departing question here. So how do you define a product success? You just mentioned that you had a bunch of failures.
Yes.
How does the success look like? I think we all know how does a failure look like.
Yeah. So it's to slightly contradict on the statement which I made earlier. So success is different for different people, right? So if I would say like that 8 of the things was it success for me? I would say in fact it was success for me, but for a world it was not success. So I was talking in front of that dimension, right? So did it make drastic did it bring in money, or did it change things out drastically there? Not really, But in terms of looking at and retrospecting it, it did bring in massive success for me, because those were the learnings which were a stepping stone for me in order to like
I
explore
get your point.
future stuff for me, right? So,
Right.
so just to say and wrap it up on what success means, it is, don't see success as how it bringing in money or whatever other things. Success is all about, like, are you gratified with that specific small journey which you took during that period of time? And if you are gratified within yourself, that is success for you. Like, so, and eventually, if you want to taste the success in terms of the world's, like how world would say it is, that's something which would come eventually. So don't be worried about that. Yeah.
Fantastic. So, in fact, that's very thoughtful of you, Serin. To everyone watching this, you can follow Serin on LinkedIn. He writes a bunch of articles, both long form and short form, and I think he is fairly articulated, as well as fairly disciplined around his articles on LinkedIn. So go follow him. There are I think 10,000 plus followers who are taking insights from Serin's experience till now and his product journey. So again, go follow Serin on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is the right place, or you have any other destination as well?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn would be the best starting point, because I'm more active there, trying to putting out more content, like at a very disciplined manner. So I think that would be the best place to follow me. Yeah.
Perfect. So Serin, it was great talking to you. So thanks for sort of taking out time today.
Thanks a lot, Jisha, for giving me the opportunity. And also making me introspect myself on my journey, like, because everybody won't get that opportunity to introspect, right? And it's a different experience introspecting in a forum like this. Thanks a lot.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Take care. Have a nice time. Bye.